Hello, hello. And I am in conversation today with the lovely Vicki Montague, who's also a transformative coach, an all-round lovely person. And she sent me an email just a few days ago asking me, what do I really think about HRT? And and both of us thought, well, it would be a good idea if we recorded our conversation. And so this is what we're doing. And maybe you find this helpful, and we'd be happy to answer your questions as well, wherever this video is posted.
Mm.
So, Vicky,
Mm.
I think what happened was I sent out a blog post
Yeah.
about the promotion of HRT, actually,
Mm.
which is really out of control.
Mm. Mm.
There don't seem to be regulators anymore who seem to be controlling the advertisements of prescription-only medicines when it comes to HRT. And I was calling that out, and also calling out this new trend, which is to use estrogen that is used for down there. I don't know if I can say as a vaginal cream, but if we could, that makes the
Hey ho.
YouTube video different. Just said it. As vaginal estrogen. If and there's this new trend of influencers telling women to put it on their face, and there's no research around that whatsoever. And but there are case studies of what happens when you're in contact with a pet or a child or perhaps a partner. Like negative effects that that can have on those people and animals. So I was calling that out, and
Mm.
as a result, Vicky sent me an email. So
Mm.
yes,
Yeah. Well, I think I said in the email it was very timely because I had actually just listened to a podcast where it was being recommended that you would put that cream on your face, which is exactly what you were saying. Um, and interestingly, I guess because my antennae are not kind of, kind of linked in like yours are, I was just like, it just sort of went by. But when I read your post, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, like that's just madness. Like that's a prescription medicine that's for a particular use that somebody is suggesting it be used for something else. I mean, that just wouldn't be allowed, like you say, with anything else. So that is, yeah, it was just interestingly timely because I had literally just heard someone say that. Um, I won't call out the podcast, but it is a very, very big one. Um,
yeah,
and I guess,
it's all over the internet. The
yeah,
influencers showing women how to do that, but using it themselves, and it comes with sort of like nudge and a wink, especially when doctors do it, because I do believe they know that what they're doing crosses some kind of red line. But they do it anyway. And it's like pushing into this whole sort of anti-aging and
yeah, yeah. Oh,
thing. But it's like it's out of control because there's no known dosage. It's never been
no,
tested. We don't know how it interacts with other things on the skin. Um, and
sunlight. It's not meant to be in the
yeah,
light.
yes, exactly. And again, that sort of like secondary exposure to other people and pets. But yes, but that did lead you to some questions.
It did
And
leave me
so,
some questions. Yeah.
yes.
Um, I guess so. Well, there were two, there weren't really questions, were they? It was a bit of a ramble, but I guess there were two things of curiosity to me. So the first one, we've talked about it before. I've talked about it, I'm sure, on my channels about my um apparent mm, disturbed sleep, let's call it. Um, So I don't even know how long ago it was. Feels like a very long time ago. I had the first bout of insomnia that I'd ever experienced. And up until that point, I'd always slept amazingly, like just, you know, put my head on the pillow, fell asleep, woke up in the morning kind of thing. Then I had this bout of insomnia, which was horrific. And I send my heart out to anybody who experiences it because it was awful. It's an awful period of my life that I'm very glad I'm not in now. But after that, um, I don't know whether it was immediately afterwards or sometime afterwards, but at some point, there's this apparent pattern. And I say apparent because I'm very curious about it anyway and about the narrative around it. But it seems that I wake a lot in the night. So it seems that I don't. have the experience of going to bed and then waking up in the morning and not having any waking in the night. So it's like regular wake ups. That's what the experience is. I'm quite suspicious about it these days because I think that there's a like it sounds really weird. I can't really describe it. I feel like I might be dreaming that I wake up, or that there's that part of the whole dream is about not sleeping. It's weird. Anyway, that's by the by. So I have got a number of friends who are on HRT, and they have had poor sleep. They've kind of told me similar things, that they just don't sleep deeply, that they're kind of surface sleeping, and that the HRT has really helped them to have like good sleep. And so I suppose there's a part of me that has that in mind, because there's also a narrative around what we're told around sleep being super important for, overall health and for preventing things like Alzheimer's and dementia, which are things that I'm terrified of, as I guess most people are. um, and so I kind of have this thing that I guess that there's a question around sleep. Can HRT help with sleep, or is that just something that's happening anyway because other things are happening for these people, so they're sleeping better? Um, and therefore, when they talk about, and I know that you're really good at presenting the kind of uh, the fact that there's not the evidence to prove that HRT can help with preventing all kinds of things that they say it might prevent. Um, but I guess there's a curiosity around, if it can help you sleep better, can that then prevent you from having these horrible brain things happen, like dementia and Alzheimer's?
Okay.
And you can see where I'm going with that. Even though I am, like I said to you in the email, I have always been against hormone treatment of any kind. I've never taken a pill. I did for about a week, maybe 2 weeks, and absolutely hated it and came off it. Um, I just, it's just not my thing, and I understand that it is for lots of people, and that's cool. Like, do your own thing. But for me, it's always been, I didn't get it. I didn't understand why I would want to do that. I would want to put that in my body. So there's no desire for me to take HRT, but I guess I have a curiosity about this whole sleep thing. So let's start there.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, what's interesting about sleep is that we have grown up believing that we need a one chunk of 8 hours sleep
Mm,
in order to be healthy. And that just might not be true,
mm,
because it seems from people who've researched the history of sleep by going into medical records, literature, court documents, we used to, before the Industrial Revolution, or certainly before 19th century, let's say, we used to sleep in two chunks.
mm,
We used to have, because we used to go to bed earlier also, because there wasn't the abundance of electric lighting that we have today, or things to do so much outside, going to the cinema at 10 p.m., see a 10 p.m. movie or whatever. So we used to go to sleep earlier. Then we would wake up about 1 or something like that and be awake for a few hours, where people would pray, have sex, go and visit their neighbors, do all kinds of things, and then go back to sleep for a second chunk. And that was the norm. And sometime a few hundred years ago, that norm was erased from our understanding or consciousness. And it was deemed to be inefficient. And it's very interesting, because that must have been a sort of like meditative time
mm,
between those hours. And there are some, I know, for example, in Jewish religion, there's something about praying at 2 a.m. And you'd be like, why would you, who would be up at 2 a.m. to pray? But
Um,
it seems like people used to be up at
yeah.
that time, and it's considered, a good time to pray when we're in that sort of like more meditative state. Um, so it seems that in times of change, we may be falling back into this default sleep pattern of two chunks of sleep. But because we are so convinced that that just like that must be a bad thing because we need
Wrong.
our solid sleep, right? We can have a lot of thinking about it and then have a negative experience, like feel uncomfortable with that experience of waking up. And so I think that's a really important thing that we need to remember that if we are often waking up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and this seems to be a pattern of our sleep at the time, in a certain time. First of all, it's not forever, but it may be the body returning to a default sleep pattern as it goes through this sensitive time of change. I mean, so many women experience this sort of like midnight waking, middle of the night waking. So, knowing that, I think, is very comforting. And it immediately takes off that, oh, that uncomfortable 2 a.m. thinking, 3 a.m. thinking that we're like, my goodness, I got to go back to sleep. And if I don't, I'm going to be so tired tomorrow and what's going to happen, etc. And how am I going to work and what, because it's like, oh, well, maybe this is just what my body needs. And I like to remind women that our bodies don't forget about the importance of sleep. Sleep is important for our health. Healing happens as we sleep. But the body cannot forget how important it is. And so it can't suddenly say, oh, we're giving up on sleep because just we've gone crazy, right? Though that fits in with this narrative of,
Mhm.
crazy menopause time. No, our hormones aren't detached from divine intelligence. And the whole sleep system, let's say, isn't detached from divine intelligence. So any pattern of sleep that seems to be a new pattern of sleep, there must be intelligence in that. So that's comforting, I think, and
Mhm.
can allow us to have a different experience at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Anything to say about that before I go on
No,
to other
I
ones?
completely agree. And I'd heard about the two.
Two chunks.
Yeah. That
Right.
helped me when I had major insomnia. That was like, yeah, that helped to take away that, like you say, that narrative. Oh my God, I've got to go back to sleep and I can't. And then it's like game over. But yeah, yeah.
Right. So
And I
good.
totally agree that like um there's not there's not stress when I'm awake a lot anymore. Um because there's an understanding that I guess it's just what's required right now for whatever reason. We don't even know. And I think for me, it's been really helpful to get curious about this whole thing of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be really tired. I'm not going to be able to do things that I want to do, or, but actually just see that that's not true. When I look at it, like I seem to function fine with the amount of sleep that I have, which is probably less than the amount we're supposed to have, you know,
Right. Right.
inverted commas, but I seem to function on it. And
Right.
there's days when I'm tired and maybe I don't do so much. And maybe that's the point, like this whole doing epidemic that I talk to clients about, like we're just so swept up in doing being how we're supposed to operate. We're meant to be busy, being busy is a badge of honor, and it's wonderful to be constantly being able to tell people that we're busy, but actually I'm not that convinced that it is that wonderful. And so if my body wants to give me less sleep so that I'm more tired and less able to do as much, then maybe there's an intelligence in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And bringing it back to this, the the waking that was an integral part of our sleep pattern once. And the sort of meditative state that we could be in at that time, awake in a meditative state, it it does kind of make sense if we spend our days so busy and
Mm,
our mind is so busy that it might be useful for the brain to be in an awake
mm,
meditative state. And it's the body sort of like pushing up that state, bringing it back to the surface. So that's something to consider, I
mm,
think, for anyone who's listening, going, yeah, but I have that 2 a.m. waking. That's something to consider. And I often say that, when we're so busy in the day, if the body wants to talk to us, it's hard for the body to get through because we're not listening. Where our attention is in 10 other different places. But at night, it's much easier to talk
mm,
to us.
mhm,
It's much easier for a signal to be heard
mhm.
as long as we're not focusing on that. Oh my God, this is
Yeah, I
terrible.
was
How
going to
am I going
say
to
it's also
get
easy
up?
for that to get in.
Yeah, it's easy for that to get in. But if we're in a sort of awake
Yeah,
state, in a calm awake
yeah,
state at 2 a.m., there
yes,
isn't that much going on, around us. And so
I agree.
maybe we can tap into some wisdom that would be useful for us.
Definitely.
So there's something about that, that I think, and like I said earlier, I don't think, from what I've seen working, with menopausal women over the last decade, it doesn't seem that interrupted sleep is something that goes on forever. It seems
Mm,
like it's a temporary thing. And it definitely seems that when we're calmer in the day, our nights are also calmer.
mm,
And perhaps the sleep becomes joined again.
mm, mm,
Um, the body seems to be working in that way.
mm,
Um, so then things that you and I share about how we can have a sort of calmer experience of life no matter what's going on, that's helpful. That should help with having smoother sleep-filled nights. Um, so that's hopeful.
mm,
But then a lot of women do wake up at night because they're having night sweats.
mhm,
Um, and again, we can have different experiences of night sweats. We can wake up and think, oh, again, I'm sweaty. I need to change my, nightshirt again. Maybe I need to change the sheets again. What about that product that someone said, that cooling sheet or the cooling pillow? Maybe I need that. Maybe I need that, right? We can have a stressful experience of having night sweats. But I've come to see night sweats just as another way for the body to communicate with us.
mm,
And I think most women, like when they're moving through when they've got into this, like understanding the framework of, okay, there is this sensitive time,
mm,
starts with perimenopause, through the menopause transition. They understand that when they're stressed, symptoms are worse.
mm,
And they can see that quickly with a hot flush. Like they can move into some kind of taking some kind of stressful thinking, very seriously, and then here comes the hot flush. Well, the same is happening at night. Like when we're more stressed in the day, we're more likely to have night sweats.
mm,
And it's something that happens more in perimenopause. Often in perimenopause, it starts with night sweats and then moves on to the hot flushes as we get closer to that menopausal transition time, 1 year without your period. But it's not inevitable.
mm,
And it does seem that stress plays a huge part in the amount of night sweats that a woman will have. But when we're out in the world listening to all these menopause influencers, they're just telling you it's your hormones, or your doctor telling you, no, it's your hormones. Your hormones are going crazy. And again, I like to like bring it down to basics. Well, why would the body want us to have an uncomfortable time at midlife? Is there any good reason? Like, what's the biologic? around this idea that the hormones are crazy, that
Mm,
symptoms are inevitable. And I don't see any logic in that. I think the body uses symptoms to
mm,
either address an imbalance or
mm,
basically to wake us up,
mm,
and to encourage us to lighten up, slow
mm,
down. It's very rarely anything other than that. And night sweats and hot flushes are no different.
mm.
We have heat that is expressed at all times of hormonal change. Teenagers have it. They suddenly feel hot. They don't want to go with the coat. They want to wear shorts through the winter. And women who are pregnant and postpartum, they
Mm.
have more heat. The body expresses heat. And it's the same during the menopause transition that the body is warmer at that time. But it doesn't mean then that we need to have hot flushes and night sweats. But sometimes the body uses that heat, I think, to communicate with us that
Mm,
something's out of balance.
mm. It's interesting hearing you talk then, because what popped into my mind I never considered before. I was sitting in the sauna earlier today, sweating, and I just thought, wow, maybe it's part of a detox thing. Like it's the body getting rid of things that, it doesn't want to be having in there whilst it's particularly sensitive. Which kind of makes sense. I mean, probably nothing to do with it, but who knows,
No,
like,
I think it is very much to do with it because, and I'm writing a bit about this, but
yeah.
the in our menstrual blood, there are higher levels of toxins than in
Oh,
systemic blood. And menstruation is
detox.
a detox
Mm,
pathway. And as our menstruation slows down, gets less heavy, etc., the body needs to find other
yeah.
pathways to detox. So it doesn't mean, again, that symptoms are inevitable,
No.
but heat is one pathway of
Mm,
detox, just like you said.
yeah.
And until the system comes back into balance to
Yeah.
use the regular detox, to
Yeah.
like the other things that we have apart from
Yeah.
menstruation, other ways to excrete toxins,
Yeah. Yeah.
then it can use heat.
Yeah.
It can use heat.
Yeah.
Now, if our body's working, if we're under stress from physical, emotional, or spiritual imbalance, then the body functions like not as well in
Mm,
terms of its automatic detox system. The body's detoxing all the time. Like we don't actually have to go in and manage.
no.
Oh,
Thankfully.
usually, hopefully, we don't need to go in and manage. Oh, sweat now, or go to the toilet now, or the body knows how to do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's detoxing all the time. But when we put our bodies under stress in innocence, then it needs to use other pathways
Mm,
to detox. And by the way, we talk about hot flushes with menopausal women, but a man having anxiety, high levels of anxiety, also has a lot of sweating, as the body is trying to find, ways to
mm,
detox in its way because maybe the regular pathways aren't working as well because
yeah.
the body's trying to overcome
Yeah.
the high
Yeah.
levels of stress.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about that. We say, oh no, that's just a man with anxiety, and we don't draw the connection when we can draw the
Yeah.
connection. So yeah, good thing you
Makes
bring that
sense.
up.
Isn't it
Yeah,
clever? So our body gives us a sauna to get rid of any
yeah,
crap that we don't need.
yeah,
Love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, but like I said, like it doesn't have to be forever, right?
No.
It can just be in this transition period. And you can see it. Like there are women who say, this is my power surge, or,
Yeah.
a name for a hot flash.
Yeah.
But there's intelligence in
Yeah.
that power surge, in the
Yeah.
hot flash, in the night sweat. And as long as we can see it as
Mm,
this isn't a sign my body's gone
mm,
crazy, it's
mm,
an inbuilt intelligence,
mm,
then we start having a different experience of the flush, the
mm,
sweat. And when we have a less stressful experience of it, we're going to have less of them because our body is more balanced
Yeah.
and is detoxing in a smoother way rather
Mm,
than more
mm.
extreme sort of outbursts.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. So have you got anything else to add around sleep? Because I also have another question about headaches.
Um, I think just generally that people have different opinions about sleep.
Mm,
And there isn't a fixed amount that everyone needs.
no.
But we know when we feel healthy and vibrant, right? And and we so often forget that we know. But
Mm,
we do know. We do know when we're feeling run down, and we do know when we need more sleep, and we do know when we're feeling healthy and vibrant. And we can all find our pattern that works for us. And it's about remembering that we can listen in to the wisdom in the body and
mm,
let that guide us
mm,
as to how much sleep we need and what could be a good pattern of sleep for us. And we don't, again, we can remember that the body knows the
mm.
importance of sleep. It's so helpful because then we can take off all that stress of, oh, I need this routine, this sleep, pre-sleep routine to, you know, okay, you can do things. We can talk about, circadian rhythm and lights and, screen time and that.
Yeah.
However, the strongest force that's, guiding you is the body's intelligence and it knows that it needs sleep.
Mm,
So,
mm. No, I think that's it's really helpful. And what comes to mind as well is how often, we might feel tired in the evening, but we override that. Oh, I can't possibly go to bed yet. My husband does it. I can't possibly go to bed yet. It's like 9 o'clock. I can't go to bed before 10 o'clock. And all these sort of rules that we see that are there that are just ridiculous because actually there's tiredness. So the body wants to sleep, but maybe it just wants to sleep a bit earlier than what you think it should. It's that kind of,
yeah,
um, and just, yeah, like you
yeah,
say, there's an intelligence there. I mean, sometimes obviously it's not possible. We might be really tired in the afternoon, and we don't have the possibility of having a nap because we're in an office or doing an operation, or like you can't just go and have
yeah,
a sleep. But if there are, I guess if there's a knowing of that tiredness, and there's a possibility of going to sleep no matter what the mind says about it, then I guess that's following that intelligence, isn't it? And
yeah,
listening.
yeah. And I
Mm,
would just add that women can pay attention as they're in perimenopause and they're still within a cycle, that those few days before menstruation are really sensitive.
mm,
And that doesn't mean anything in terms of the way your life needs to be in those few days.
yeah,
But I certainly noticed that I often felt called to go to bed really early
yeah, yeah,
on those days before menstruation, like 7 o'clock or
yeah,
something. Now, obviously, there was something going on with the kids and I
yeah,
couldn't, then I wouldn't. But if I could,
exactly.
I would.
Yes,
And I would like just block out, oh no, but surely you need
yeah,
to. Surely you've got to. No, I just really learned to listen into the body and
yeah,
feel the call. And it became so obvious.
mm,
And just listening to the body in those few days leading up to menstruation, it seemed to smooth the whole cycle,
right,
right? It just seems that there's something that the body needs. The body needs more, TLC at that
mm,
time, and you give it what it needs, and
mm,
you benefit throughout the
mm,
whole cycle.
mm, mm. It's the
So,
listening again, isn't it?
yeah,
It's rather than overriding, which we just basically learned to override, haven't we? We've learned to override the body, because it's not convenient often
yeah,
what
yeah,
it desires, or we've picked up an idea that we have to exercise 5 days a week, and this is a day when I have to exercise. So never mind, my body's tired. I need to go anyway. Like those sorts of things, isn't it? It's just,
Yeah.
um, yeah, being aware of that. Yeah. And I guess that kind potentially leads on to my next curiosity, which is around headaches that I get. Um, so I've had headaches probably my whole adult life, really, on and off, and often been around my cycle. Um, uh, so I'm perimenopausal, uh, and in January, I guess over the last couple of years, they've ramped up a bit. Um, and I've noticed that there's a clear pattern of being somewhere around my period, not always in the same place, not always before, not always in the middle, not always after, but somewhere relating to the cycle. Um, and I've kind of, I guess, explored lots of different things that might potentially help, that have, come to mind. But January this year, they kind of took a new shape, if you like, or we're early in the month in the year, so I completely can see that there's also the mind making up, um this is how it's going to be, kind of, potentially creating a problem. But anyway, so January the 1st, I had not drunk the night before, like most people. I had been the mum taxi, so I hadn't had a drink. Only I woke up with the nation's hangover, or so it seemed, because I had the worst headache and was throwing up all day, which was just like, what the heck is this? This is not amusing. Um, and yeah, so that, and then, and then it was, I think it coincided with my period that month. February, I went to India, and I woke up on the morning of my flight with the same thing, this crashing headache and needing to be sick. Um, and interestingly, obviously, my mind was going back to the previous month. Oh, well, this is going to be a disaster because I'm going to be sick all day. Like I was like, like this is how it's going to be now. And I was kind of, you know, I was on to that, if you like. Um, and it was a very interesting test of mind over matter, if you like. It was like, okay, well, I have to take this flight. BA are not going to change it, although I tried. Um, I have to take it, and I cannot be sick. That's it. Like I've got to get the tube. I was at my sister's. I needed to get the tube to Heathrow. I needed to get through all the security and all that nonsense. I needed to get myself onto the flight. I don't want to be sick at any point in that. I had some bags with me, but there was a definite like I can't be sick. And I wasn't. I felt sick, but I wasn't. Um, anyway, there's been various other symptoms kind of arising, and I think I said in my email, like I had actually reached out to my GP and just said, like, there's this sort of seemingly change to this headache and various things around it, and so they've done some tests and they've come back fine. Um, but there's still an idea that these headaches are related to hormones, and I knew that you would have a potentially different view,
Mm.
or uh, you might challenge that for me. So, because it absolutely looks true to me that headaches are that this change of hormones must be something to do with the headache. So, yeah.
Right, right. Well, I'm not going to say that the change, the flux in hormones doesn't, the flux in hormones creates a sensitive time,
Mm,
right? And so that happens um, around ovulation and around menstruation
mm,
in our cycle, that there's a bigger flux at that time. So there is a hormonal pattern that plays out. However, no uncomfortable symptom is inevitable. But it could be that your body is just making an adjustment, as we talked about menstruation being a detox,
Mm.
right? And your body's making an adjustment. Maybe your menstrual bleed isn't as heavy as it used to be. And so there's some other detox going on at that time. And I can share that when I first skipped periods, on the day that I was supposed to get my period, on the first time, I had like an eye infection.
Mm.
And I never have eye infections. And then the next month, I skipped a period. I had an ear infection. And I
Mm.
never have ear infections. And it was just like, this is really weird. But
Mm.
it's like the body was trying to expel something in a different way. Now, knowing that, like realizing that, me coming with my curiosity allowed
Mm.
me to have an easier experience of these occurrences. And I also knew that that didn't have to be like, it wasn't going to be that every single missed period I was going to have some kind of infection from some part of my body, right? But my body is just going through an adjustment. And it seems like your body's also going through an adjustment. And if you have suffered from headaches in the past,
Mm.
then it can, that could be a sensitive part that's just,
Yeah.
lighting up at that time. And although it's uncomfortable, luckily you've done some tests, I would say there's probably nothing that you need to do and it will just, calm down.
Yeah.
But to understand that you're in this sensitive time of change.
Mm.
And in our modern lives, we don't, sometimes we don't give our body exactly what it needs for, in different ways, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah.
And it's just a sign that maybe, there's just something that we can bring back into balance. And maybe
Mm.
even not. Maybe
Mm.
it's just a detox pathway that's being activated. And it is just what it is,
Mm.
right? There must be intelligence in it.
Mhm.
Especially like you were
Mhm.
talking about the vomiting, like that, that's a aggressive detox path.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but like I said, it doesn't have to be something that continues with you. But it's
Mm.
just interesting to note and an invitation to lean more into the intelligence in the body and to trust that the body has got you, is taking care of you because it is.
Mhm.
Okay. And then if there's something that you feel called to, well, maybe I could, do this or eat more of this. Like for some reason, these days I'm postmenopausal, but for some reason, these days I'm being called to eat a lot of different mushrooms. Don't know why. And I know that there's some, I've read about some connection or something like that, but
Yeah.
but I don't even need to know.
Yeah.
But I can just follow that gentle call,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes I can actually at the time when I did cross that sort of menopause time or started skipping periods, I really
Mm.
went off greens. And there's something about, when you menstruate, you lose blood, you lose iron.
Mm.
But you can, when you stop menstruating, your iron is not being lost anymore. So your iron can be going up. So
Mhm.
like eating lots of greens could be not what your body
Mm.
needs. Now, I don't know that that's exactly true, but I just knew
Yeah.
that
You didn't
that
want
place in my, farmer's market, I would look at the greens and I'm like, I don't want to eat any of this stuff, right? And I used to be a big sort of kale eater and,
to.
lots of lettuces and greens and stuff. So, like, it's just being able to listen in
Yeah.
and
Mm.
trust that
Mm.
your body has an intelligence to guide you.
Mhm.
And there will be times when it feels a bit uncomfortable, when maybe, we get a headache, when maybe we get something. Like, is there something that we need to do? Is there something that we need to change? And then relax into the intelligence of it.
Yeah, I love it. It's so amazing because what it's opened up, there was a couple of things that have, well, more than a couple, but I'll talk about a couple because I think it just follows that, showing how uh, there can be whispers that we can follow. Um, so last year I was talking at an event and there was a chiropractor there, and I've never had chiropractor treatment. I found myself going over and talking to them. Um, didn't know anything about it, and they did like like a quick free assessment thing, and they pointed out a few things, and they offered me a relatively cheap package to have an X-ray and to have various sessions. And I was like, wow, I seem to be doing that. I don't, like I have no idea. I don't understand why, but this seems to be what's happening. And I'd fallen on my head off a pony, um, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. So I kind of knew that my neck had an impact. It had never been X-rayed. So I was curious to see, I guess. I was curious about the X-ray. Anyway, cut a long story short, I had the X-ray, which showed that I've got military neck, which is like the spine is not curved anymore, it's completely straight. And I had some chiropractor treatments and I absolutely hated it. And there was this whole thing going on of like the mind saying, well, you've got to go, like you need to sort this neck thing out, la la la. But absolutely hate it. Like, this is not for me. And so after a couple of treatments, I just couldn't. I just was like, no, this is not the thing for me. This is way too much for my system. Like it felt far too aggressive for me personally. So anyway, I stepped away from that. But interestingly, this last couple of weeks, I was like called to go and look back at the X-ray. I had been sent the picture, but I hadn't even looked at it. And I went and I had a look at it. And then I did a bit of research about it. And I was like, one of the things that came up was that it can create headaches if you've got this straight neck rather than a curve. And so that then led me to look at some exercises that I could do that would help so that is fascinating in itself, like just following those little breadcrumbs, as
Yeah.
I say. And then the other thing, I don't know how long ago, maybe 6 months ago, I was talking to a friend and colleague of ours who started to do some fascia work, and she's training to be a teacher in a particular modality. And I'd started to do some work with her as a work practice client, if you like. And so it's a lot of fascia release, which if you know anything about, there's potentially quite big impacts for the body. Um, and when you were talking earlier about the detox thing, and I was thinking, well, around my period, as you say, I'm going through a sensitive time. I'm doing this fascia work. Potentially, there's a load of toxins that are being released from that need to come out, and hence there's some vomiting happening. But what it also led me to back in January was just that listening, like deeper listening to the body and what it needs, and realizing that I'd actually been going quite full on with this fascia work. Like got very excited about it, was feeling really open and lovely doing it, but actually realizing that perhaps I needed to just listen a bit more to my body and that it was too much in, too quickly kind of thing. Um, so I kind of, sort of stepped back a little bit from that and have done it in a more, I don't know, calm way or in a more relaxed way, not going
Right.
full out, full on.
Lower impact way, let's
Yeah,
say.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, it's beautiful just having this conversation is just a reminder that there really isn't anything wrong. It's just we're constantly being invited to just listen, to just slow down and just see with what makes sense, what feels right in this moment to do. And we can all do that. And it's part of my work. As you know, I've got what my latest book was about, intuition, and that essentially is about listening to something other than the mind. um and I run a a membership um, which is just an offering to support people in changing their listening habits, I guess, from the mind to the whatever you want to call it, the heart, the self. Um, but yeah, it's like it's just so beautiful. It's just,
Yeah.
there's just that constant realization that no, we really can listen, and it can be right now in this moment, not trying to work out what we might do next month or next week or in an hour, but right now, what is it that the body would love?
Yeah.
And kind of getting used to listening and actually taking that step in that direction and not being waylaid by the mind that inevitably has an objection to that. Oh, I feel like I'd love to just lie down for 5 minutes, and the mind's like, well, you can't possibly do that. You need to do whatever. But
Load the
learning,
dishwasher,
yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah, there's always going to be, but learning that actually, like you were saying, when we do, like you were saying about, when you were going through perimenopause and then it smoothed out the whole of that kind of next period. Yeah, it's just so beautiful to see that. Like that 5 minute stop and lie down could just smooth out the rest of the day. But
Yeah.
we're so used to listening to the no, I've got to do this, this, and this before I can do the thing that I really desire, that our poor bodies then pay the price, don't they? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
And it's so like what you're offering is so helpful because we don't get taught how to listen to intuition and being able to discern where what wisdom sounds like is such a skill that we actually do need to practice because we can so often think, oh, this sounds like wisdom. This sounds, exciting. This sounds like wisdom, or this is fear that must be true, whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah,
wisdom is so gentle.
yeah.
It's so loving.
Mm,
It's so feels like possibility
mm,
than the other kind of voice that we can hear, which, oh, you must do this, oh, you must run and do this, and you must do that, which is like the examples that you brought, like with the chiropractor, that, oh yeah, but you took the step because it felt right, and then you're like, wait a minute,
yeah,
I'm sort of like getting drawn into it because I feel like I
yeah,
must do it, but maybe that's not exactly what I need right now,
yeah,
and that feels lighter and loving
exactly.
and really listening into that and allowing that kind of voice to guide us. It's a real skill that I guess we're born with it, and then we sometimes
Yeah.
some way somehow we lose it, and we need to sort of practice that again, that sort of like really listening and
Mm,
realizing, oh yeah, maybe that's that's a loving path, and that might lead to something that's that's interesting, giving, helpful, healthy.
mm.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think it can be, I say to people who join my community, it's like, it's just that support, because all around us is the conditioning that's saying the other. It's saying
yeah,
you've got to revere the intellect, you've got to listen to what you think, you've got to work harder, you've got to, like we're just surrounded by that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like to turn away from that is the true rebellion, to turn away from what the mind has to say and to come back to what
yeah.
is rebellion as far as I'm concerned. Like, like that's a true rebel. And it's not easy to be a rebel, right? Because then we're on our own essentially,
Yes,
because everyone else
yeah,
is doing the norm and just
yes.
following whatever thought they have in the moment. Um,
And this is a good lead in to talk a bit more about HRT
Mm.
in a rebellious, controversial way.
Yay!
Because my approach to HRT or any medicine is that every woman, can decide for herself and it's in consultation with a medical professional. And I am not a medical professional and I never tell women to take medicine, to come off medicine. That's their decision.
Mm,
And at the same time, just as you said, there's a lot of conditioning that is coming with HRT today. And the main message that comes through is that your body does not innately know how to go through the menopause transition. And thus, women need HRT. That's at the root of what propels this in massive multi-billion industry, that we're going to convince women that their bodies don't know. And there were many ways that medicine or professors, professions or how would you say?
Philosophers?
Philosophers. I'm like speaking in a different language. Philosophers, like would convince, women that they're faulty and the second sex and the faulty sex, or destined for malfunction in the past. And those theories have been replaced with a hormone theory that somehow our bodies do not know what hormones we need through menopause and beyond. And that, I know the woman said, yes, but it's helpful, but it's helped me and it's helped me. And that's fine. And we need to remember that it's a made up theory about women's bodies. Women have always lived beyond menopause. We have references. I talk about this in different places many times, but we have references in the Bible. We have references in ancient Greek literature. We have references from the 12th century of women in menopause. And it's not women who were these freaks of nature in the village who somehow lived beyond menopause. No, it was understood that women go through menopause. And by the way, we know that it was around the same time. And so this whole idea that somehow, menopause is a modern mistake, completely made up. But you'll even hear doctors talking about it because it's part of, unfortunately, the brainwash about women's bodies don't know. And thus you need medical intervention in a regular part of our life cycle. Now, what I see happen is women can take HRT and start feeling better with some of their symptoms. But also women take HRT and feel a lot worse. And there's lots of women who I've spoken to over the years who've, had to go back and try different ways of, getting HRT and different doses and different this. And often in the end, they just give up because nothing seems to be suitable for them. And there are other women who go, oh no, I take my HRT and you can't take it away from me for the rest of my life and etc. And women will choose their own path. But I don't see any reason or biologic for us to blame hormones. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that a woman is designed with a fault that pops up at midlife. And I think that the menopause transition is a rite of passage. We're supposed to change. We're supposed to learn more about how health is created. We're supposed to graduate to be the wiser elders, the wiser women for our families and for our community. And if our approach to symptoms from insomnia, night sweats, headaches, skin problems, everything that by the way, I used to experience that in my 40s when I was in perimenopause at the beginning. If our approach is, well, let me just suppress it so I can get on with my life, we're going against the flow of nature, which wants us to look inside, which wants us to understand more about ourselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and wants us to go through this rite of passage that doesn't have to include suffering. It doesn't have to include symptoms. But it cannot be that our bodies do not know what hormones we need and when. But we've been very convinced that that must be true, just from everything around us. But when we come into ourselves and really ask ourselves that question, could it be that every single woman has a design fault. It doesn't make any sense. So obviously, it doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
Now, another thing that women do get from HRT is a placebo effect. But go find, I've researched, I look for this kind of research all the time, but it's very difficult to find. And you won't find much discussion about the placebo effect. But even with testosterone now, it's even more, apparently, the placebo effect is even higher because it's considered even more sort of forbidden fruit that you would, as a woman, take testosterone. But you can see that if so many women can feel an improvement from the placebo effect, then what is that? What's actually going on? And is what's going on this sense of now I found the thing that's just going to help me, so now I can relax. And that's what's happening. Or women who go to private doctors, suddenly there's someone who's prepared to listen to them and prepared to have, sympathy and empathy as they list off all their symptoms, rather than saying, oh, well, just, get through it or
Mm.
whatever. And is that enough, right? Is that creating a change within? Is that allowing women to move beyond their symptoms? So there's just not enough research about it in the HRT space. But I know from research that it does exist, the placebo effect. And I also know in my absolute core that it cannot be that our hormones are
Mhm.
detached from divine intelligence. It just cannot be.
Totally agree. I mean, the body is so incredibly complex and clever, isn't it? Like, I keep reading stuff. I'm in the middle of reading um a book about ultra processed food, and some of the things that I'm reading in that about the body and the metabolic system and all of that just being just incredibly like self-regulating, and then we come in thinking that we need to, I don't know, diet, or we need to do these crazy things, and the body has it all under control. But of course, the industries behind the information that tells us that there's a problem are set to benefit, like you say, with HRT. There's huge amounts of money to be made out of the idea that women need to take something for the rest of their lives. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me either that the body could possibly be wrong. It's like,
Right,
and
right.
I completely appreciate that there are women who cannot or feel like they cannot change their life. They can't, you know, um, listen to the symptoms and alter accordingly. They're in a whatever job they're in, high powered position or whatever, and you know, their wisdom is telling them take this drug and you'll be able to continue. Like there's no, we can't sit here and say that's wrong, because it's not. Like, that's their intelligence in given their circumstances. That's the intelligent way forward. um so I think, I feel very fortunate that I have created a job, a life where I have more opportunity to listen and to kind of course correct, and like, give time to hearing what my body needs and wants. But I also understand that, I've got friends who that's just not possible right now,
Yeah,
whatever, from their level of belief, from their level of
yeah,
seeing the world, and that's,
yeah,
so that's
yeah,
HRT is what makes sense. So it's like it comes back to that. What is it that makes sense for you now in this moment?
yeah, yeah. And I often say that, for a woman who's experiencing a lot of symptoms and she just feels like, she's not getting enough sleep. But by the way, it's like often the night sweats that are
Mm.
um interrupting the sleep, and just like all the benefits that they associate with HRT can just be from allowing a woman to have a few less night sweats at night, and then she sleeps better, and then she feels better, and then, and that's what, oh, that people say, oh, HRT improves your mental health, but it may be just in, reducing night sweats and
Yeah.
improving sleep, and that's, for some people that's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and and it's not, necessary that you need that in order to, sleep better, from going by, some of the things that we were saying here.
Mm.
And I've spoken to lots of women who were on HRT, felt they were doing really well, and then they had to come off it. Either there was like a more worrying side effect that was appearing, or because their doctor felt like, they were on it for, 7 years, or whatever doctor said, because after a certain time, your risks of more serious side effects increase. And there are women who will say, no, I've been on it for, 20 years and I'm never coming off it, and that's fine. But there are women that need to come off it. And um, and I've spoken to those women, and they've gone right back to square one, and even minus, into the, worse than what it was. Um, and then they realize, oh, now I'm going to actually have to listen to my body.
Hmm.
Because if you put off what your body wants you to
Yeah.
learn,
Yeah.
it's going to come back.
Yeah.
So for women who've taken that choice, oh, now, I just need some kind of symptom relief. And, sometimes the HRT could help with that and sometimes it won't, but sometimes it can. If a woman is there on that path, take the time to listen in anyway,
Definitely.
because there's no replacing that.
Mm.
So your body will still be talking to you,
Mm.
but the HRT creates a less sensitive time in a
Mhm.
woman's life. But that may be helpful in the short term. But think about the long term.
Mm. Mm.
What menopause is designed to help you become?
Mm.
And is there a way that you can help yourself on that journey if HRD is helping you to sleep better? Is there a way that now you're feeling more alive in the day,
Mhm.
that perhaps you can address imbalances that are actually creating the symptoms? Because the hormones aren't creating the symptoms. If hormones created symptoms, all women would have the same symptoms, and all
Sure.
women do not. It's imbalance that we, in our innocence, create that leads to symptoms. The hormonal flux creates the sensitive times that make symptoms more likely to occur. So, I think that the way HRT is promoted as this panacea for all women's health now, women's health problems now and in the future, is a massive lie and disservice to
Mm.
women. So, yeah, I guess people can, feel comfortable living within that lie, but it's ultimately not very helpful. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like I was thinking about mental health, if you've got serious depression or anxiety or whatever, and um you take some medication, it just allows that to be a kind of rest, if you like, a reset to be able to then listen and a kind of be more able to function and see what it is that needs to be changed in that, that's a great thing, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, but to just take it thinking that that's going to be the end,
Right,
yeah,
right.
and then you
Well, it's
end up
it's
on 10 different drugs.
yeah, because it's a similar lie to
Yeah,
begin with. It's a similar sort of like the chemical imbalance lie, which
right.
is completely disproven.
Mm.
And that people are told, oh, you have a chemical imbalance and that's why you
Mm.
have depression or anxiety or whatever. And then they'll take some
Mm.
form of medication, and then that comes with side effects, and then they'll need another form of medication that comes with side effects. And so it's just this route of medicated for life, when actually the source was not a chemical imbalance but misunderstanding. And it's the same with the symptoms we experience at midlife. We blame the hormones when it's not the hormones' fault. The
Yeah.
hormones create the sensitive time, but not the symptoms. So we can try and fix hormones, but like we're not getting to the source
Yeah.
of what's creating the symptom to begin with. So we're just putting a plaster on it. And I've also spoken to women that, yeah, it used to work. First year it worked, and then it stopped working, the HRT.
Mm.
So yeah, it's not what it's promised to be. And
Mm.
it is by and large, rooted in a misunderstanding of a woman's body.
Mm. Mm. Well, let's hope that maybe our conversation has put some seeds of different possibilities in there for people listening. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously, both of us are around. If you want to, you've listened to this and you are confused or want more, I don't know, information, or you've got a specific question about yourself, then both me and Tanya are very happy to have a conversation relating to the different ways that we share the understanding that we have that ultimately there is nothing wrong with us. We are not broken. We do not need to be fixed.
Yeah, yeah. And just to mention, because you did mention at the beginning, and I wanted to bring it up, um, this idea as well that we need hormones to protect our brain, and we need hormones to protect our bones and our heart. Like that is totally and utterly made up. It's so made up, and I've written a lot about it, and you can check out the references to that over on my blog. But women get into that fear as well, that you express as well, well, if I'm not going to sleep well, then is it going to we can have a healthy experience of sleep, and we don't need to worry that our lack of hormones is somehow damaging our brain, because of course the brain knew that menopause was on the cards, and it hasn't gone crazy due to a lack of hormones. So like, just like to create calm on all the in all the corners. And like you said, for anyone who wants more clarity and to explore more about the understanding that we share, both of us, um, then yes, you're welcome to reach out to either one of us.
Definitely. Oh, it was lovely to chat with you. Thank you so
And to chat with
much
you.
for helping me navigate through that, as always. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna